The Michigan Insider Postgame Recap with Sam Webb and Josh Newkirk.
75-72 is the final. Number 3 Michigan takes down undefeated number 5 ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers. Sam, it was one of those crazy games. Nobody could miss in the first half. Second half, the defensive locked down. Nobody could make a basket from beyond the arc, but Michigan finds a way to come back. I think they're down 9 with about midway through the second half and win this game, Sam. Instant reaction.
Yeah, it was an example of a team, and I tweeted this, figuring out a way. You would think that without 2 key players tonight, Braden Frager, who we had an idea a while ago wouldn't be available, and then Rink Mass, their big fella, who is who is going to tax you and stretch your bigs and change you up defensively. This team came out, and Dusty made this comment in the press conference. He said it may have been tougher to guard. It was like a marathon every half-court set. And I think it took a minute for Michigan to also talked about this, to get connected defensively. You had guys getting lost on switches. You had guys, not getting hung up on screens. Dusty called it intensity to the basketball. Those things need to improve. I mean, their backcourt outplayed Michigan's backcourt significantly in the first half of this game. But kudos to those guys. They never let them, even with them, shooting the lights out, 65, 66% in the second half. They didn't let them get away. They owned the glass. Morez came out with a big first half, had a big game today. And I thought that, the steadying forces, they found some things late. I thought there was a key defensive sequence late in the second half where you saw, first half, where you saw a glimpse of what they were going to do in the second half, where, guys were fighting through screens. They were really, really communicating on switches. Namari jumped the passing lane, got down the court for an and one. It was just huge, and that was the sign of things to come in the second half of this game.
You were just Michigan just kept chipping and chipping away. Every time they sort of got back in it, Nebraska would answer. But eventually they tied the game, and the freshman made that big shot on the baseline, put Michigan, their first time leading, I think, within the first couple minutes of the ball game. They go up, they went up 2 there and Michigan's found a way and closed this game out. Big rebounds on the end, and forced Nebraska really to take some tough shots.
Yeah, man, they needed the young fella, Flint Town's own Trey Mckenney tonight, because it was a rough night for Elliott. Had more assists and turnovers with 8 turnovers and 7 assists. Namari didn't shoot it like he typically does. And so here's the young fella coming in there, hit 2 big threes, right? Getting to the free throw line, made 3 big free throws when he was fouled from the 3-point line, and then that big drive and finish late in the game. I mean, just huge minutes on a night where your veterans didn't really have it in the backcourt. They didn't make any excuses, but I just kind of felt like, man, all the energy that they were exerting on the deepest end of the floor. I mean, it was like, you know what it's like? They play like to get their guys, and it wasn't just Sanford. You also had Jamarcus Lawrence getting free. It's like, remember when they used to run Rip off all those screens, or run,
it's exhausting.
Yeah, or run Reggie Miller off all those screens, or run Ray Allen off all those screens. They're going to run you off of 30 screens.
Yeah.
And it's a test of your endurance. It's a test of your defensive connectedness. How well do you communicate? And so they were losing guys way too much in the first half of that game. And, Namari said, hey, I just, felt good coming off my hand, didn't really drop, felt good for Trey Mckenney. He made a couple of huge threes. And of course, like I said, that finished late. This was the depth showing through for Michigan in this game.
Yeah, so some weird stats, right? Michigan 1 for 13 in the second half from 3. So was Nebraska. You mentioned Naomi Burnett. He was 0 for 6 of the game. Yax was 0 for 5, right? Those are your big-time scores. From outside, they couldn't hit a bucket.
Yeah.
And then you had 19 turnovers. If I told you that, you would have thought they would have lost. Yeah. But then where did they come through? The free throw line, 14 to 17 in the second half. And then I don't know what it was for the overall for the game, but to come through with those clutch baskets, especially from some of the big guys who aren't as great from the line, to get those key points when they're in the 1-for-1.
Yeah, they won with the advantages that they had. So athletically, this team is going to have a tough time staying with them inside the paint if the refs would call some fouls, right? And the refs started calling some fouls as they pushed the action going to the rim. They own the glass. Like, you've got to out-rebound this team. I think they outscored them by 9 in second chance points because they had a double-digit margin when it came to rebounding in this game. So they were able to make up for where they were deficient. The shooting, some nights is not going to go your way. The turnovers, they got to clean that up, man. They got to clean the turnovers up. We talked about it in the last game, and some of them weren't the kind where, they were playing good defense on the other side. I mean, you're throwing it down the court over 2 defenders with the man receiving the passes.
The football passes, right?
Yeah. I mean, if he catches the ball anywhere but at the rim, he's going to have to dribble to get there or be coordinated and take 2 steps to get there. So you got to catch, gather, get to the rim, finish. That's a lot to ask your 7'3" guy to do streaking down the court. Those are the kinds of passes that you can't have. Namari said, we got to hit singles.
Yeah.
We got to hit singles. And, there were times tonight where they were just, they tried to drive in the traffic because Dusty made this comment. They were packed in because they knew Michigan wasn't hitting from 3. So you had some situations where, your guys tried to force the action going to the rim and wound up dribbling into trouble, hoping that the ref would call fouls. Fortunately, they had better drives in the second half and they were rewarded at the free throw line, but got to clean up the turnovers.
I'm just curious your thoughts. What does this win mean for Michigan? Obviously, big win. They beat Ohio State last week. You beat Nebraska. Obviously, we're going to talk about Michigan State coming up, but what does this win mean for Michigan? What did they prove tonight?
They proved that they can find different ways to win. This was not a stellar offensive performance by any stretch. It was far from it. So can you find other ways? Can you lean on other things to get you across? They were able to do that. Can when your main guys aren't going offensively, your point guard stirs the coffee. Yax is your best offensive player. Namari is your best shooter. None of that really manifests tonight. Your point guard didn't play well. Yax didn't own them as much as you would think he would own a physical matchup. And Namari shot wasn't falling, and they still won the game. So you had different guys stepping up. Morez was huge. He hit a 3 early. They came out and got him on the 3-point line. He drives for an and one. He's been excellent from the free throw line here of late. I don't know what his percentages are on the season, but he's been one of the more reliable free throw shooters on the team. So he stepped up. Trey stepped up like we talked about. And then defensively, look, that's a controllable. You can play with more effort and you can communicate better than they did in the first half. And they did those things in the second half and it propelled them to victory.
Yeah, the fact that Nebraska had 50 points in a half and only scored 22 in the second half, that tells a lot about how this Michigan defense played tonight in this big win, top 5 win. Again, solidified themselves as one of the national title favorites. But a big game, it's going to say, hey, this team can go all the way. In a lot of people's eyes, it's coming up this Friday night in East Lansing. Obviously, it's Michigan State. It's a tough place to play. Michigan hasn't won there since 2018 when they had Mo Wagner and that team that went to the Final Four. We don't see many wins up there.
Yeah.
What's your initial thoughts? Obviously, it's time to flip the switch and talk Spartans.
So a couple of things jump out. The environment there is going to be bananas, right? And so it's going to be Yax's first time in that environment. It's going to be Morez's first time in that environment wearing a Michigan uniform, right? It's different. So, as intense as some of these games have been, exponentially greater. It's coming up Friday night, right? So the emotion of it, harnessing that, corralling that, not let that be a part of the game. Rebounding. Michigan has been harping on this. The coaching staff has been harping on this, feeling like with their size, they should be a better rebounding team. This team that they're about to face is going to be all over the glass. All over the glass.
As if every time.
Yeah. So the fight when the ball goes up, is going to be unlike any fight they've had all season. You want to see those guys win those battles, keep them off the offensive glass. Defensively, both teams like to run on make Sam misses. So Michigan should be ready for that part of it. But the turnovers, Josh, they got to take care of the basketball. You can't count on them being able to shoot. You hope that threes are falling, but it's not like they're facing the bastion of shooting either. I mean, Michigan State shot well against the last, but you don't count on them being a great three-point shooting team. You got to force them. You got to force them to play your game, try to get them in the half court and make them put the ball on the deck. Try to score at the rim where that's your advantage, where Michigan has more size and more athleticism when it comes to their big men. Now, Michigan State has been playing well of late. They found a way to win tonight at Rutgers where they weren't playing their best game and they were able to gut it out, send it to overtime, pull it out in overtime. So Jimmy Fears playing a lot better. There are some games, I think, against Duke. I don't know that he scored in that game. Right. So
he played huge last year, though.
And this is, for people who watched that nationally televised game against, I think it was Duke that they lost to where he didn't score. This is like, okay, now you're back on the national station. You know it's going to be amped up for him in this game. And Elliott, a great matchup for him because he's coming off a game where nationally televised, didn't go real well. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. Who's going to win the point guard matchup? Who's going to win on the glass? Who's going to keep their team out of live ball turnovers that gets the other team out running? Those are going to be three big keys to this game.
Yeah, turnovers, rebounds, free throws. But I think one last thing I hit, Michigan brought Yaks into town for big games like this. This is where your best player has to play like your best player.
100%.
Going to give him a pass tonight. Wasn't his best game. He has to play his best game in East Lansing for Michigan to get that win. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be exciting, Sam. As always, stay tuned for all your coverage and more on the MichiganInsider.com.
The Michigan Insider Postgame Recap with Sam Webb and Josh Newkirk.